So at Envision, we have a lot of images, obviously, as it's the main sort of payload for our interactive prototypes. And we do a ton of tracking around images on the server side. We don't do all that much tracking around images on the client. And I've been thinking about ways that we can perhaps change that. And one thing that I want to keep track of is how many times an image load actually errors on the client. Now, we could attach error handlers to each image that we render, but I'm interested in baby stepping into that tracking arena by using Event Delegation. Now, natively on the DOM, error events don't bubble up through the DOM using the bubble phase, which means that we can't use Event Delegation in the traditional sense. But an event actually goes through three different phases. It goes through capture, target, and bubble. And while an error event on the image object doesn't bubble, it always captures, and we can use that capture phase to observe errors. So to see this in practice, I have the ability here in this demo to load working images and failing images. If I load working images, you can see we're loading the working images, and here we have 5 images, and I'll just show that these are images and not just divs with background colors. And now if I go to load a failing image, you see that we call the failing images, and these are all images that don't exist on the server. And what you can see here is I am capturing all of those failure events, and I'm doing so, and you can't see it yet, and I'm doing so on the document body. So I'm not doing it on the image tags, I'm doing it at a single point in the DOM tree, which is why I'm calling this event delegation, even though it's maybe not event delegation in the traditional sense. So let's just look at that one more time. So now if I go to load failing images, you can again see that all of these are resulting in a 404 not found, and each event here is being captured and logged to the console. All right, let's take a look at the code to see how this works. So here we have our 2 links and our image container that's going to be populated dynamically. And we have our 2 sets of sources, the working ones, which are all the PNGs, and the failing ones, which are all the GIFs. Now, I'm going to take the body element on the document, and I'm going to attach the error handler the same way we would normally. And here's my error handler function, which you can see here, which takes the event and then simply logs out the target and the source. And the key to this is that I'm supplying a third optional parameter to the addEventListener method, which tells it to use the capturing phase. By default, this is false. If you omit it, it's false, which means that we use the bubbling phase of the event handling. But by providing true, we're telling the browser to attach this handler to the capture phase of the event propagation, which means that we're listening and observing that event as it propagates down through the DOM tree to the target before it's handled by the target and then potentially bubbling back up through the DOM. Now, the capture phase doesn't get used a whole lot, and it doesn't offer a whole lot of functionality. For example, we can't cancel event during the capture phase, but we can observe it, which means that we can also track it. So we can use this to track the error event, perhaps log it to the server, or keep some sort of running statistics around how many images don't load, and then we can report that back to the server at some later point. The rest of this demo is just around actually attaching the click handlers to the loading and failing. It's not particularly interesting, clearing out the DOM. Really, the meat of this demo is right here, attaching the handle error capture during the capture phase on the body, which is a single point in the DOM tree that's now listening for a dynamic number of elements farther down. And again, if we just jump back over here, we can see loading the working images, everything is copacetic. Loading the failing images, each of those results in the 404 not found, which we're observing at that single higher point in the DOM tree, the document object model tree, during that capture phase. So again, it's not event delegation maybe in the strictest sense, because we're not delegating the error event to this handler, but we are using a single handler to track a dynamic number of elements farther down in the DOM tree. So in that sense, I'm calling it event delegation. But anyway, just a way to handle image error events that don't bubble in a delegated type way using the capture phase of event management in the browser.